Hey, what's happening? Once again, I want to thank everybody that is attending this session for allowing me to come through their devices, the video screens, right? And to spend this little time with me before y'all go out to and party real good. I was looking at my comrade Bishop Brown last night, and he was really having major fun. I wish I could have been there with him. I'm looking forward to getting an opportunity to getting back to Cal and really enjoying and spending some time with my Cobra comrades, not only my Cobra comrades, but any and everybody that have chosen to be a part of the advancement of our communities rather than part of the destruction of our community. So Bishop Brown, Almighty Mac is real, One Real, Almasi, Lil Troy, Young D, family, all you comrades, man. I'm looking forward to really spending some time with y'all, man, and really going over some things and talking to you about some things. I was talking to my son, Almasi. We had a brief interaction over the Facebook concerning Tookie Williams. And first and foremost, let me say that I'm very proud of the intellect that my son has. He's truly an intellectual giant. And at first, it kind of startled me because I remember while he was doing time and I was doing time, we'd write each other back and forth. And even in steeped into in the structural gang culture mentality, I seen his intellect. I seen that spark, right? I seen that light, even in the darkness. I seen it in his mind, just by the things he said to me and how he articulated himself. And I tried to do everything I could to cultivate that. And he did everything he could, and he turned out to be an intellectual giant. Not only that, he's very talented. We were talking about Tookie. A lot of people don't know the mind of Tookie Williams. I mean, some people read books. Some people remember him when he was in the streets. Tookie was autodidactic, right? Autodidactic meaning he was self-taught. And that's the best type of knowledge. That's the best type of wisdom and understanding, because when you're self-taught, you don't understand anything. You're not under anybody's interpretation of the thing that you're studying. So this is why I use the word overstand, because I stand over people's interpretations or people's renditions of what knowledge is. And Tookie was one of those cats. Tookie overstood that. He understood the condition that we were in. He understood the thing that he helped to perpetuate, and a lot of people don't know. In the beginning, this demonstration that we've signed our lives to, that we've tattooed in our faces, in our hands, in our backs, in our chest, and arms, right? This demonstration was a progressive demonstration. It was a demonstration that was started out of a necessity. That necessity being other people coming into our communities and taking advantage of those that were in the poorer communities because they could. And law enforcement wouldn't enforce the law because the people that were doing this were Caucasian people. There was a group of Caucasians called themselves the spook hunters. And they used to come inside of communities in Los Angeles, and they used to terrorize Black people. So the organization started out of a vacuum. The vacuum was left by the Black Panther Party. We'll get into that a little later. I see somebody has asked me a question. They asked me, the question that they ask is, what do you think about these civil rights leaders such as Martin Luther King Jr. as far as furthering the movement? Now, well, as far as what I think about Martin Luther King Jr., my understanding of him has grown in my later years. At first, I didn't like his methodology. I've always loved the man. You have to love a black man that stands up in the middle of America and attempts to make right wrongs and speak truth to power, and then be willing to stand on the front line and allow himself to be subjugated to the police brutality and the racism, prevalent racism that was not only prevalent but overt racism that was the rule of the day at the time. So I always loved the brother, but I didn't always understand or love his methodology. But in my maturity, in my intellectual maturity, I find that Dr. Martin Luther King was purposely misrepresented by media outlets, purposefully misrepresented by those who were even inside of his organization that wanted to turn him into nothing more than a dreamer. When I reread the speech, I Have a Dream speech that he made, I found that the I Have a Dream part of the speech was a fraction of the whole speech. In that whole speech, you go back and you read that speech, because you don't hear about the details or the full length of that speech in school, because he was addressing some issues, some very hot button issues at the time. He was addressing incarceration. He was addressing poverty and housing, and he was addressing police brutality. He was addressing a lot of things that didn't make it into the snippet that has become his legacy. They wanted to turn Martin Luther King into a dreamer, because they know that if he's a dreamer, the dream is not tangible to anybody but him. See, this is how they separate you from your leadership. They attempt to slander, misrepresent, feed you misinformation or disinformation in order to separate you from your true leadership. And then once they separate you from your leadership, then they are left to do what they will with their leader. So the game has been played, and it's constantly been played. But I've grown to know that this man was more than just a dreamer. This man was an intellectual giant, because the things that he was saying at the time that he was saying them was so profound that they are now only being seen in the proper light since he's been gone. This is 2017. So these things are now unfolding. The same thing he was talking about, unemployment, youth unemployment, is the same thing happening today. The same thing he was talking about, police brutality, is the same thing that is happening today. The same thing he was talking about, unfair housing, is the same thing that is transpiring today. So we're still suffering from the exact same ailment that he addressed back in the day. And he was supposed to be loved, a Christian brother. He was supposed to be loved by everybody. But he wasn't as loved as people would want you to believe. So that's what I think about Dr. King, intellectual giant. I love the man. I have another question. The question is, what about the Black Panther Party and Minister Farrakhan? I'm going to start with the Black Panther Party. The Black Panther Party was a beautiful organization. It was an organization that made major advancements for Black people and the understanding of white people here in America of the Black people's condition, right? The Black Panther Party was aided and assisted by numerous Caucasian people who too were left uneasy about the inequality that they were seeing being perpetuated by their counterparts as it applied to Black people. So the Black Panther Party did a great deal. In my opinion, and I'm merely stating my opinion, and we can have dialectic on this opinion if you choose to, but my opinion is that the Black Panthers' shortcoming was that they invested in an ideology, Marxism. They invested in an ideology that was European in origin. Now, this is not to say that Marxism wasn't an ideology that was efficacious for for people that are downtrodden or people that are oppressed. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, if you are seeking equality, if you're seeking justice, if you're seeking freedom, if you're seeking equality across the board, then you can't use the ideology of a people who are the people that are serving injustice and inequality. So I think that they were short-sighted in the fact that they laid all of their issues at the doorstep of Marx and Marxism. And Marx and Marxism happened to be a European who though wasn't in America, probably thought along the same lines as American Europeans. Because let's be honest, I mean, America is a byproduct of Europe. So it's a byproduct of Europe emptying its prisons and sending people off, right, out of their country, and they land here in America. So what we're seeing is the ideology constantly being renewed, reformed, reconfigured, and then presented again in another light or another fashion. As far as Minister Farrakhan, I have one thing where I differ with Minister Farrakhan on. And that the only thing that I differ with the minister on, and believe me that I love this brother, because you cannot not love a man, as I said about Martin Luther King, that stands up in the midst of injustice and inequality and racism and all of the other isms that have kept Black people in a position where we couldn't advance as our white counterparts. You have to love a man and stand up in the midst of that and speak truth to power. Now, I don't agree with the religion of Islam to the point where I would propagate it for the masses. And this is why I say that. Because if you look at all of the major religions, if you look at Judaism, if you look at Christianity, if you look at Islam, if you even look at Buddhism, if you look at Hinduism, if you look at all of these religions that have the major populations that are submitting to this ideology, you'll see that in your research of this, that all of these major religions borrowed from our Kemetic ancestors, from our people in Kemet, which is erroneously now called Egypt. It's called Egypt is a Greek word that was used after Egypt was conquered. So they used after Kemet was conquered, they used the word Egypt to redefine it. And this is how they always separate you from yourself. They redefine your reality and they detach you from your origin, because that's the only way to really oppress a man. The only way you can oppress a man is to rob him of the knowledge of himself. And once you rob him of the knowledge of himself, you can get him to act in a manner that is conducive for you and always to his own detriment. So when you look at these religions, you see that they borrowed from Kemet. And if you borrowed from Kemet, then why do I need to study the branches? I really need to be studying the root, right? Because from the root is the purest part of the tree. So I really need to be studying from the root, not these branches that is a semblance or an adaptation from the original, right? So that's the only thing, that's the major thing that I disagree about, as far as not Islam as a religion. I mean, and not Islam as a way of life, but Islam as a religion. And what we're seeing now is Islam as a religion, right? And I don't want to see my brothers or my sisters indoctrinated into something that we don't fully understand, because there's things that are happening in the name of Islam. There is things that are being taught under the umbrella of Islam that is not of God and is not as righteous. So I don't want my brothers and sisters to be indoctrinated into something that we don't fully understand. So I don't propagate Islam as a religion. I don't propagate Christianity as a religion. I don't propagate Judaism as a religion, but I do propagate these philosophies as a way of life, because there is life in Islam. There is life in Judaism. There's life in Christianity. There's life in Buddhism. There's life in Hinduism. There's life in these ideologies and philosophies, as long as we don't turn these things into an institution called religion, because once we turn it into an institution, it becomes a tool by which we oppress the masses. And this is what we need to be getting away from. No one needs to be under the thumb of anyone today. No one needs to be under the yoke of oppression today. Every man and woman needs to be able to live the full expression of their lives and maximize their potential. And religion stifles that. I was asked another question just now about Elijah Muhammad. Well, one thing, let me make this statement about Elijah Muhammad. I heard Elijah Muhammad say one time that if you want to see black people in their natural form, look at Egypt, right? Why did he, and I asked myself, why did he say that? If he's propagating Islam, why did he say to look at Egypt? Well, this is why he said it. Because all of the world's knowledge, wisdom, and understanding has been learned from Egypt or Kemet. Every prophet or prophetess, if you look at from Abraham, Jesus, Moses, look at all of these people that are historical figures inside of the Bible, and you'll see that every one of these people lived or studied in Egypt. Why is that? And after it was only after they lived and studied in Egypt that they were effective at addressing the ailment and the spiritual sicknesses of the masses. Do your research, right? So I agree with the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad in that light. I love the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I love Malcolm X. I love Minister Farrakhan. I love Martin Luther King. I love Huey P. Newton. I love George Jackson. I love all of these brothers that have been. I love Sada Shakur. I love Angela Davis. I love the sister Joy Liberty. I love Michelle Alexander. I love Frances Cress Welsing. I love everybody who was able to stand up in the midst of oppression and speak truth to power. You can't do nothing but love these people. Now, you may not agree with their methodology. You may not agree with their philosophy in totality. But you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Just because we have a disagreement on some minor points. We have to look at the objective. And if the objective is righteous, then we have to be able to look past the methodology, as long as the methodology is not one that is oppressing people, right? So that's what I think about the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I also want to touch on Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey is one of our unsung heroes that many people know nothing about, right? They don't know that Marcus Garvey had the UNIA movement. He had the largest following of black people in the history of America. But there's a blackout on the teachings of Marcus Garvey. Why is that? Why isn't Marcus Garvey taught in the schools? Marcus Garvey was a Christian. Why isn't he taught in the schools, right? Marcus Garvey was one of the first people, beside David Walker, right, who brought us that self-determination, who brought us that do for self mentality, who brought us that entrepreneurial spirit, who brought us the philosophy and the ideology of do for self. Marcus Garvey did that. Built one of the biggest organizations that America is known, right, as it applies to black people. And millions of people that was registered inside the organization, right? So do your research. Think about Marcus Garvey. Look at Marcus Garvey. Look at him good, because he had an excellent economic plan. And the economic plan was so excellent that it worked and fed and provided for millions of black people right here in America when nobody else was trying to provide for black people. As a matter of fact, when we had laws and we had organizations that were doing everything within their power to stop black people from reaching the pinnacle of success that they were reaching. Now, I don't agree with nobody taking care of anybody, right? We live in a capitalistic society, right? And if we live in a capitalistic society, we must understand capitalism. And capitalism is one wherein people want to receive the most return for the least bit of effort. This is what capitalism is, right? So we have to understand that. So if we live that and we understand that, then we understand that we must do for ourselves. We must become the producers of the things that we use. We must become the providers of our own families. We must become those. We must become self-sufficient and self-reliant, right? See, we had that spirit at one time in America. Now, when I talk like this, I'm not excluding anybody. This is not to the exclusion of Caucasians. This is not to the exclusion of Hispanics. This is not to the exclusion of Asians or Native Americans. It's not to the exclusion of anybody. It's merely to the inclusion of us, right? I don't have to dislike you to love me. And somehow I think that that point is lost, right? You think that I love because I love me and I love those that look like me that I hate you? No way. But love, charity begins at home. I must love me before I can even love you, right? And this is our condition in America. We must learn how to love each other and love ourselves in order for us to be able to love any and everybody else, right? This is a overstanding that Tookie was coming to, right? Tookie was he was a brilliant mind. I hate that they murdered him like they did. He was a brilliant mind. And I was talking to my son today, and he kept in touch with me for 2 years straight. We wrote each other back and forth. And I had been receiving requests, you know, and even being encouraged by some people to publish those letters. But like I said, I had not. It's something that me and him hadn't discussed, and I'm ambivalent about publishing those letters. I'm torn, you know, between publishing them and not publishing them. I think that on one hand, I think that they should be published because it's a part of an archival knowledge that most people don't have, or most people wasn't exposed to, because Tookie was kept on death row and he was kept separated from the rest of the prison population, and he was kept separated because they feared not what he would do or not what he was doing, but they feared what he had the potential to do. And me and him identified a lot because I did a lot of time in the SHU, not because of things that I was doing while I was incarcerated, but for things that they felt I had the potential to do, right? They felt that I had too much influence amongst African Americans in the system, so they kept me separated from the population. So I know the struggle and I know the strife that Took was going through, and we identified a lot, because though he was on death row, I had a death sentence too, because I had life without the possibility of parole. Life without the possibility of parole is a drawn out death sentence. And I've watched many brothers with the same sentence die inside of the prison, behind the steel curtains. They had the same sentence that I had. So it was a prolonged death sentence, right? So we were able to identify on many different levels. Now, we had some disagreements as far as methodology, but we never had a disagreement on objective, and me and Took never became disagreeable, right? He was a brilliant man. You wouldn't believe how brilliant this brother was, and it was a travesty for him to be murdered like he was assassinated like he was assassinated by Arnold Schwarzenegger, a man who had some type of long-lasting beef against Tookie Williams, because Tookie Williams outshined him, right, in many different aspects, outshined him on Venice Beach and outshined him in other areas where he's taking steroids and everything he can to get as big as he can, and we got the comrade Tookie just in the yard somewhere lifting weights and really massive, just outshining him, and this grudge, you know, was held on too long enough, and the man found himself in a position to exact retribution, and that's what he did. And it's a sad thing, and any one of y'all that ever voted for Arnold Schwarzenegger, any one of y'all that ever watched another Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, you know, you should be ashamed of yourself, because he took one of our great minds. He assassinated one of our great minds. He didn't allow his brother to evolve, right? See, we get into so much while we're young that our lives are cast away. It's like we are not allowed to evolve. We're not allowed to grow. We've done a lot of things in our embryonic stages. If you look at the beginning of life, in the life germ, which is sperm. Now, please don't mistake what I'm saying. But the life germ, which is a sperm, if you look at that process and you watch that process from the life germ going into the clot and going into the fetus, and then eventually coming into life, you will see that it's an ugly process. The baby looks like something foreign. It looks like something aquatic. It looks like something that lives in the water, and it's an ugly form until it is formed fully. But when we're in our embryonic stages of understanding, of overstanding, when our embryonic stages of intellect and morality and emotional maturity, we do a lot of ugly things, right? But the things that we do as a child are things that should be forgiven by a society that says that it believes in second chances and it believes in a child evolving into an adult, right? But when that issue comes to us, you know, we fall short of that overstanding, or when they fall short of that overstanding, right? So I'm not saying that the comrade didn't do some ugly things. You know, I did some ugly things, right? Who haven't done some ugly things? As a child, as an infant in wisdom, an infant in overstanding, an infant in emotional maturity and in spirituality, who hasn't done some ugly things, right? But we evolve, we grow, we mature, right? And we should be allowed that process. I think that Tookie would have been a lot better, right? Free, or a lot better living, even all he asked for is to get life without. He didn't ask to be free, he was asking for life without, so that he can clean up some things that he done in his infant stage of overstanding. Who doesn't allow a man that? Who doesn't allow a man that? Especially knowing that the ugliness that they've done in this country, in the name of Jesus and in the name of Christianity, right? And who are you to judge the potential of another's life? Who are you? Jesus was talking to some Jews. I'm not talking about the Jews of today. I'm talking about people that had a certain belief system. I'm merely talking about something that Jesus was saying in the Bible to some Jews. They were having a debate back and forth, and the debate had got ignited about Jesus saying that he was a God or the Son of God, right? So they started off with accusing Jesus of blasphemy. They asked Jesus, they say that, are you saying that you're the Son of God? And Jesus answered them like this. He said, didn't you read that we are all gods, children of the Most High God? So what he was telling them is that not only am I the Son of God, me being the Son of God makes me a God. And this is not a new wisdom. This is a wisdom that is already written. So they end up going back and forth. So Jesus ended up telling them this at the end of the argument. They told them they be not born of fornication. They said that they were Abraham's seed. Jesus told them that you're not Abraham's seed, because if you proceeded forth from Abraham, you would love me, right? So they went back and forth for a minute, and then Jesus said, ye are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father you will do, right? Now listen to that. So we all think that we're all God's children, but the devil got some kids too. in all reality, right? You of your father the devil, and the lust of your father you will do. So what is it that makes us devils or gods? It's not the color of our skin. We can't be so superficial and so minuscule in our thinking that we think that the color of one's skin makes him a devil or a god. That's not us. We're far too intellectual for that. We're far too spiritually awakened for that. We're far too conscious for that. What decides whether you are the child of God or a God, the child of Satan, or making you a Satan or a devil, is the sphere of activity that you're engaged in, right? He said, you of your father the devil, and the lust of your father you will do. So this is not only telling you about a people, but it's telling you the type of way to describe this people, to measure and gauge who these people is. The lust of your father you will do, right? I don't want you to think that this is a religious thing, because I'm not religious at all. I like to take people to the scripture that they understand. If I was dealing with a mostly Muslim audience, I'd take them to the Quran. If I was dealing with a mostly Jewish audience, I'd take them to the Torah. And if I was dealing with a mostly Christian audience, which I probably am, I'll take you to the gospel. This is what you say you believe in, but you need to understand it better. You need to have a better understanding of the things we read, right? Because we read these things and we say we believe in these things, but when it comes to us applying these things to each other, we fall short, right? So let's be careful, right? So back to Turkey, beautiful mind, a natural leader, a giant, a god amongst mortals, right? And this is where the understanding comes in at. And all God means is power and force. I'm not talking about something spooky. I'm not talking about a cloud of smoke. I'm not talking about something that's off in the distant galaxy, sitting around somewhere on something and looking down at the world and saying, That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the power and force that exists within you. In 1 Corinthians, it says, don't you know that you are the temple of God and God dwells in the temple? Think about that. If you are the temple of God, this body, there is no other building made of wood or stone or brick or steel that is more suitable to house the Spirit of God than this temple that is called our human body, right? So think about that. If there's another question, Okay, we talked about the Black Panther Party, right? Let me talk about one more shortcoming of the Black Panther Party, though the Black Panther Party did great things, excellent things. The Black Panther Party allowed itself, and probably couldn't help this, it allowed itself to be not only infiltrated, but it allowed itself to be manipulated and moved by the CIA and the FBI, in as much as you had the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Central Intelligence Agency. You had these people planting stories inside of the organization, right? They would plant a story. Now, at the time, Maulana Karenga, he was the leader of the United Slaves Organization. Those who don't know, Maulana Karenga is the one that came up with the celebration of Kwanzaa here in America and instituted it. He was the leader of a group at the time. The Black Panther Party was active and prevalent and most ignited. He was the leader of a group called the United Slaves. These two groups existed in California, and both of these two groups were doing great deeds amongst the people. So the FBI would plant stories inside of each group saying that the other leader of the other group was disrespectful to the leader of the Black Panther Party. right? And it got so bad to where they manipulated them to the point where they were going to war with each other, right? Now do your research on this. And this is read the COINTELPRO documents or the Broader Files, BROWDER, the Broader Files, or the COINTELPRO documents, right? And they'll show you how the FBI manipulated both groups to where these groups went to war on a college campus in San Diego, California. Here's two groups that are doing great work amongst black people, bickering, going to war over falsely planted and disseminated information by the FBI, who took full credit for putting these people at odds with each other inside this documentation. Think about that. And then think about the Bloods and the Crips. And know that the FBI and the CIA infiltrated us too. Their first move is always to introduce drugs. Once they introduce drugs, they kill the spirit of loyalty. They kill the spirit of integrity. They kill the spirit of honor. And once they kill that, then they can move you in any direction they want to move you in. Hard drugs. I'm not talking about weed. I'm talking about the drugs that they purposefully reconfigure and inject into movements in order to kill the loyalty and integrity and honor within their movement. They definitely use crack cocaine to kill the movement that we were making. The Crips came out of a vacuum, right? The Crips came out of the fact that the Black Panther Party fell short of its goals. This is where the Crips came from. Now, I won't go deeper into that right now. But next weekend, it is my hopes that my son Almasi will join me, and we'll go deeper we'll just have a discussion on things. We won't go beyond the pale of where we can go to put ourselves in a position wherein we become persona non grata, right? But hopefully we will get together and we will have a discussion, and it's long overdue, about some things that I know he want to talk to me about, and I want him to be comfortable talking about those things. And if those things are, or if he is comfortable to talk about those things, then it's a go. If he ain't comfortable to talk about those things, he's not a go. And he's an independent thinker, and I think most of you that know him know that he's an independent thinker. So it's my hopes to get back with you next week. I want to relinquish your attention and let you go out. I know it's about time for y'all to go out and go to the club, and I want to tell all of y'all, man, especially my Cobras, I want y'all to be real safe out there, right? Real safe. And my in-step representative, stay safe, comrade, right? In-step, stay, right? Because we've been out of step for too long. In-step denotes movement. It denotes activity. It denotes demonstration, right? It's an action word, right? So let's be vigilant while we go to enjoy ourselves tonight, and let's be careful. And Bahati, Askari Neusi, one love, comrade, and Amasi, one love, Cobras, one love, in-step representatives, one love. All you sisters and women out there, period. You know, and when I say sisters, I'm not just talking about black women. I'm talking about those that are conscious and those that exist on a plane wherein the things that are minute are not appealing to them. They're not interested in the intrigue. They're not interested in the drama. They're not interested in the cinematic representation of what love in a relationship is. You my sister. Everybody be safe. I'll leave you, and I hope to see you again. Thank you for allowing me to have these words with you, and may your holidays be right in a minute.